Welcome to episode 2 of A Message from Mom, where we are breaking down the myths that daughters in law don't get along with their mothers in law. And today I am joined by two of my daughters in law. So I have Kelly Jalali to my left.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I am married to Alex, Beth's oldest, and we've been married for going on 5 years.
And my daughter in law, Chelsea, to my right.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I have been married to Andrew, Beth's middle child, for going on 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
We're almost 4 weeks. Yeah.
4 weeks. All right. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, cheers, ladies, to relationships.
And family.
And family.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers.
You don't necessarily need to be related by blood to really love each other. And today our topic is dinner parties,
It's a great topic.
right?
Really
I
is.
love a good dinner party.
Okay. Is it a dying art?
Well,
Is it passe?
I think that's what we need to get into because I think in our modern times, COVID notwithstanding,
Mhm.
I think the question of dinner parties as a dying art or a passe thing, I think is a question for right now,
Mhm.
actually. And personally, I love a good dinner party and I hope they never go away because it's one of my favorite things ever.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. I'm with you. But I do have a feeling that I'm single now, so I'm not throwing dinner
Mhm.
parties on the regular, but I will say I love to have, even if it's one of my friends that comes over
mhm.
or hosting a girls' night out, something like that. I love to do that because I think bringing people together and having that community, I
Mhm.
think it's so important for us to have.
I agree.
But
So let's break that down actually, because maybe we need to redefine what a dinner party is.
Right.
Because does it have to
Yeah,
be
I
just being
know.
8 people? Can it
Or
be
even,
one person?
I
Or
mean, is it a
two people.
party? Does it involve dinner? Like, is it appetizer?
Right? Right? So I will just go back. I'll go back in the day because I was married for 35 years before my husband passed away. So we did host a number of dinner parties.
Mhm.
And it was a very fun way to get to know people. So you didn't perhaps know the people that you were inviting all that well.
Mhm.
But it was also a great opportunity to do it. And also back in the day too, they had the like movable feasts
Sure.
where your neighborhood, like maybe 10 couples participated
Mhm.
so this house had the appetizer.
Mhm.
So there or the fondues were
Yeah.
Mhm.
really very, very fun. But when I was first married in the 80s, there were two things that I loved to do. Fondue was really, really big at that
Mhm.
time from the 70s
Yeah.
on into the 80s. And that was such an easy way to invite
Mhm.
people over. And it kept you busy
Yeah.
because you actually had an activity,
Yeah.
something to do, and the
Mhm.
conversation would flow very naturally. So that was a very, very fun, easy way. And I wasn't necessarily the best cook when I was maybe ever,
Oh, I
according
mean,
to revisionist history, but
fondue is easy enough.
but as we moved on and into our marriage, I love to throw dinner parties and
Mhm.
Mac did too. He was in the hospitality industry, so hospitality was really just second nature to him.
Right.
And as I said, it was an easy way, and we moved a lot. So when we were newer to a community, to find those people to invite
Mhm.
to our home.
Mhm.
So I love them. I think that, and someone once said, and it might have been Ina Garten, who I love. I mean, she's my guru.
Love Ina Garden.
Oh my gosh, for recipes and hosting dinner parties. But I believe it was Ina that said you should have no more than 8 people,
Mm.
but 6 is really the
Hmm.
perfect number
Interesting.
for a dinner party.
I do agree with that
Mhm.
because the last dinner party that I hosted with Andrew, I think we ended up having 9 people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Awkward number.
our our table in our dining, like our formal dining section, is not big enough. We need to get a bigger table.
Okay.
which,
or
which we didn't quite realize when we initially moved into our house because it worked in our townhouse. But we didn't have enough seats. So
Yeah.
I had to pull chairs from our breakfast table in, and we were all squished together. Which that could just be a table situation, but I do think had we had 6 people, it would have been a lot better.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I think there's something intimate and sweet about being in close quarters at a too small table for a
Yeah,
dinner party.
that's true.
So I think let's maybe consider why and how the dinner party has changed over the decades.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think for me, growing up in the 80s, I was watching reruns of television from shows, in the 60s and 70s. And dinner parties, I'm thinking of like Bewitched in particular,
Mhm.
because I can recall those very clearly, where
Mhm.
she was always throwing a dinner party for her husband's advertising, colleagues and maybe clients that would come to the house. And so there was always some like sitcom comedy gem about, what was going on in the kitchen or whatever. But I think
Mhm.
growing up at that certain period of time, the idea of dinner parties, and as you said, you gave a lot of them in the 80s, was very different than now. And I
Mhm.
do think that there's something really, and actually fondue goes back to this if
Mhm.
I think about it, because I think the evolution of dinner party has become more of a grazing thing. So it's almost like the movable feast, but you're not
Mhm.
actually leaving someone's house.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then you have the activity of grazing, which is similar to fondue
Mhm.
parties.
Mhm.
So while you might not all be sitting at a table with, fine dining ware and whatever else you might have, to set the table, the fact that everybody is going to congregate around an island or a table that has, that's heaping with appetizers and fun things to graze on. Conversations are started. People are hanging out there. They're talking about the food. They're getting to know each other. So I think the evolution of dinner parties where you sit down,
Mhm.
like we're used to from the 80s,
Has
Mhm.
has
changed.
really changed
Yeah.
Yeah.
into this kind of new sort of idea where you're
It's more
grazing.
interactive.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can walk around and talk to different people without feeling like you're getting up from your seat at the table to have a conversation with someone else or talking across the table.
Right.
And I love
Mhm.
graze eating. Like it's one of my
Mhm.
favorite ways to eat.
Mhm.
If I could graze for dinner, that would be like the best thing ever every night.
Right.
But
Well, all the boards, and that
yeah,
really does come
The
into
charcuterie.
cheese and
exactly.
dessert
Yeah.
boards.
Mhm.
And yeah, I
But
mean,
it also doesn't limit you to, I feel like if you are hosting a dinner party and you're seated next to someone, then sometimes you feel like you're limited just to talk to the person to your left or right.
yeah,
You are.
If it's a bigger party,
You are.
right.
whereas, if it's more of a grazing, you
Right.
can
It's
talk
true.
to everyone.
Right.
It's much more egalitarian, right? So like we have, and you've seen Downton Abbey. I don't know that you watched Downton Abbey,
I
but
watched that. Well, okay. I've watched
you've tried.
I've tried. I did try it and I did watch the movie.
Yeah.
But you know what I did watch was
Gilded
yes,
Age.
Gilded Age.
Which is very
Yes.
similar.
Similar.
It's
We're
similar,
talking
yes.
about a slightly different time period.
Yes.
It's not that different, but it goes without saying that the idea of what I'm about to say like translates over the decades, during that time period where they're having these dinners with, 8, 10, 12, 16, like huge
Mhm.
numbers of
Like
people.
huge parties, yeah.
Right. And so there's this etiquette of where for a certain period of time, and this is dictated by the host or hostess,
Mhm.
that, and maybe it wasn't, maybe this was just, it was carved in stone, but for a certain part of the dinner, usually from the beginning to the midpoint to like maybe it changed with each, and maybe you know more about this than I do, but um, for a certain period of time, you only talk to the person to your right.
Mhm.
Oh, and then you
And then
switch.
you switch and you talk
Yeah.
to the person to your
Mhm.
left, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
where someone sat at a table was super,
Super.
Very important, and it was
Yeah.
always the hostess because you had the name cards, or not the name cards,
Yeah.
but the place cards.
Yes.
So the hostess, it was like a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The dinner parties were
Yeah.
planned exactly like that, and so they decided who they thought would be able to converse
Mm-hmm.
or
Well with each
who
other.
they wanted to meet.
Who they wanted, yeah.
Gilded Age does a great job in the
They
last
do.
season with this, where
Uh-huh.
the one lady who had been the servant that, or the lady's maid that then marries the rich guy, and she wants
Yeah.
to sit next to the
right.
the royal,
The
and
Duke.
Yeah.
yeah.
The
Yes,
Duke.
whoever
Duke,
was in
right.
town. Yes.
So I mean that, and that kind of prescribed dinner party
Mhm.
clearly went out of style a long time ago.
Mhm.
So, fast forward and we're in the 80s, but you're still as a hostess wanting to create an environment where your guests are seated next to who you
Mhm.
think they're
They-
going to hit it off
They
with if
hang-
they
yeah.
don't already know each other, right?
Exactly.
But I think today now, the idea of having a dinner party, and this is why the appetizer thing, having boards is like so great, is that you want everybody to meet and love everyone
Yeah,
else, right?
right.
Because maybe you're introducing two separate friend groups, like when you get married. or when you're just dating someone and you buy a house together,
Yeah.
or whatever stage you're at, like you're maybe bringing two friend groups together and you want those people to,
Yeah.
be able, so you don't necessarily want to have this prescribed sort of seating situation.
Yeah.
I think that evolution, I mean, maybe it comes from,
And I don't know. I mean, so growing up, because I grew up in the 90s, you know, my childhood, I don't remember my parents really ever having a lot of dinner parties, if I'm going to be honest. And I don't know if that was more on them or their jobs, you know, like maybe their jobs didn't prescribe them to like throw lavish dinner parties. But I don't know. I mean, did you and Mac have a lot of dinner parties?
We did early, and definitely earlier in our married life as well. And when we lived in Houston, that was the longest place that we'd lived anywhere.
Yeah.
So we lived there close to 6 years. And so we really did build up a very lovely friend base. And then as far as work, he would also bring work people and we would entertain that way. And it still was in favor, where we sat down at the dinner table. And so I was very thoughtful of
who sat.
who
Yeah.
we invited and, what, and then also what I planned as far as the meal, because that was also very important too. I always picked something fairly easy. Lasagna was always my go-to because that was very, very popular.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it still is. I don't think it ever
Not
goes
the frozen
right.
Stouffer's lasagna.
No, I mean, I did it. My mom.
It's always a thing. It's always
really
in
is.
style.
Yeah,
It really is.
It is always in style.
So I would do lasagna because you can make it ahead of time. So there's a lot of prep work that goes into it beforehand. But then when my guests arrived, I could actually
enjoy it
time with them and not have to worry about, stirring the pot on this or the timer for this. So so you pop the lasagna in and then Caesar salad with anchovies and a coddled egg. And then I always did a lemon meringue pie. So that was like my go-to.
Yeah.
And even years gone by. So this is before you met Andrew. He was still living in New York, Chelsea, but I was in New York over Valentine's Day. So we had a Valentine's dinner party for his thing. So I did a mushroom or it was a vegetarian lasagna. But
oh really?
So we had, and his roommate Pete made the Caesar salad and we did some garlic bread, and I think I just got
I've heard about Pete's Caesar salad.
I think we all have, yeah.
Pretty
apparently legendary.
Yes, but I was very thoughtful about making dinner very, very easy so I could spend time with my guests.
Yeah.
And then when we sat down, there was really just a nice cadence to everything. And I was also very big, and we still do this just at Christmas, having a game at the very end. So then you're doing
together.
Right.
Charades used to be very big. Pictionary was really
I remember when
huge.
Pictionary came
That
out.
was so that was always a fun game where it divided. We usually did the men versus the women. Teams like that, or trivia was also really, really big.
Yeah, Trivial Pursuit's a great group game. I have to ask, did you, since Mac was in the hospitality industry and you guys were moving and making friends and everything, did you ever entertain his colleagues from the hotel?
We did.
Yeah. So was there a difference between how you would throw a dinner party for your friends in the neighborhood and then his colleagues from the hotel?
Yes. It was always much more formal with his colleagues and sticking to protocol, where dinner parties with our friends was a little bit more casual.
So did you change your menu when you cooked what would you make for colleagues?
Would you cater?
Wow.
Would you cook?
Very good. Very good. Ding, ding, ding. You go to the head of the class.
Hi.
Go to the head of the class, Chelsea. So we would cater it.
Yeah.
We would cater it. So then
you don't want to leave anything to chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so then it would be delivered. And there were a couple of dinner parties I even remember them where we hired people and then they actually served us. So I didn't have to do anything, so I basically got to like Downton Abbey or Gilded Age. I mean, I got to sit down and really enjoy everything. We one time we even hired like a little mini orchestra.
Oh my God.
We lived in Houston and we had a pool in the backyard. So it was a backyard by the pool and a little orchestra. It was a lovely evening.
Oh wow.
So it was a lot of fun.
That is way beyond any
dinner
party that I've ever. Yeah. I always think so I haven't thrown many dinner parties because we just bought our house. I guess it's been maybe a year and a half now. But we've thrown a few, and then we threw a Halloween party. But I feel like every time I throw a dinner party, and I don't know if you have any kind of tips to overcome this. I just, there's something about me where I feel like I need everyone to be having a good time and everyone to be, having a conversation with someone. And I get this anxiety of, oh, is everyone having a good time?
Any hostess feels that way when you
Yeah.
party. Yeah.
You do, because you don't want your party to be the dud party, because we've
No.
all been to a dud party. I mean, let's face it, we've all.
Oh yeah.
And then you and all your friends are talking.
I know, they talk
the
about
next
it.
day, and
Well, Andrew and
be
Pete
the
have the
person.
funniest story, and I always say,
Oh, do they?
remember
so
when they
Pete-
were in San Francisco and they ditched Mac and I and Christian to go to this party.
Oh,
And it was a
really?
dud party, and ended up being the worst party they ever went to.
Oh, I don't remember that story.
I was like,
We're sorry that they ditched you.
they were very sorry. And I was like, karma is a bitch, because you
Karma
ditched
is a
us.
bitch,
We
yes.
were fun. We were having a lot of fun, but you thought that was going to be a better party. So it wasn't a
Yeah.
better party. But we've all been to those parties.
Sure.
But
I don't want any of my parties to be like that.
no, but I think a lot of it has to be like planning,
Yes.
prepping, and then mingling.
It has to do with the guest list, really. I mean,
I do think the guest list definitely, I mean, because like you said, you have to have people that know each other at least somewhat, even if everyone doesn't know each other.
Yeah.
Or that you feel are going to vibe with each other.
Exactly.
I think that's the thing, is like knowing, even if people don't know each other, just knowing enough about your friends or acquaintances that you would be able to say, oh, you and that person have something in common. Okay. That's a good matchup. But at least as long as you have a few of those.
Yes.
And then you've got a few other people that know each other maybe and can kind of ease it all together. I don't know. I haven't actually, gosh, I'm sorry to say, but I haven't been to a dinner party that wasn't all about just having family in a very long time. And I'm worried maybe that this is probably a COVID thing also, because, we moved to Athens and then COVID happened. We moved here in August and then COVID happened. In the meantime, we were doing a home renovation. And so we were living in an apartment. I clearly wasn't having any dinner parties at my apartment.
Right.
But I think it is something that I do actually miss from living in a more metropolitan area where I met people with more frequency, strangers, not necessarily family. And but I do love a good dinner party. But I do have to say though that some of my favorite dinner parties that I've thrown have been family get-togethers,
family events.
Which we do. We always we do that actually fairly regularly.
We do.
And I really do like that.
Yeah. I think the first Thanksgiving that we had in Athens was, I think we had 12
Yeah, that was great.
people. It was huge, and it involved our neighbors and it involved our friends that we had met here. So we had this great mix of like new friends, neighbors, family. Had family come in from California. It was just a really wonderful, and I actually set the table. So we actually, we had, it wasn't just kind of a
wasn't the grazing.
It wasn't grazing.
Wasn't the boards, and you can wander around with your plate and things like that.
We had a set table and everything. And honestly,
there is something nice about having a set table.
There
like
is.
doing a formal.
I do too. Especially I think when people aren't expecting it. I think that has kind of become something that I really like. I like the idea, come over for brunch, and you think it's going to be a casual thing. However, it's like it's set up formal. And there's flowers and it's, it's special.
Well, I have I have a friend that I met recently. She's a new friend. And I met her through my Pure Barre Pilates classes. And
that's a great way to meet people.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
She but we've gone to coffee together like 2 separate times, and she posts all the time about she'll host friends over, and she just goes all out on her brunches and her dinner parties, and she'll post it on social media. And so this last time we had coffee, I said, I need to be invited to one of these.
There you go.
And she was like, oh my gosh, I'll invite you the next time. But she'll post about it, and it's just fabulous because, she thinks of everything down to just even like little gifts that she'll give them to take home,
Yeah, I like that.
Like a little party favor, which I just think is so cute.
I love that.
Well, I think dinner parties really are, it's just, again, your community, being thoughtful about your community, because it really does, it takes you out of just your day-to-day existence, and it's like, okay, let's do something special. Let's do, and you really are thinking about your friends, because you're looking at your friend on social media and you're like, "Oh, these look like so much fun. I want to be
Yeah.
invited." So
Yeah.
then the opportunity came and it's just like, I want to be invited. And she's
I
like,
invited myself.
well, I think,
to the
but I
next
think that's
one.
I think that's actually perfectly acceptable in something like that, because sometimes we don't actually stop to think about if
who
we,
we would put on the guest list,
right?
maybe
Mm-hmm.
adding to the guest
That's
list.
right.
You
And
just think of the typical people.
exactly.
Right.
And always expanding. And that's
Yeah.
what I do think, and
Mhm.
especially back in the day, as I said, when we were new, that was actually one thing that I would actively be thinking about. Okay, I need to be expanding my friend
Yeah.
base.
Right.
And I also think too, we need to be thoughtful about that, to always be extending our friend base, because I
Yeah.
will tell you, having moved so many times, and when you're the new kid on the block,
It's hard to make friends.
it really is, because everybody's like, well, they have, I can't remember if it's 4 and no more, or whatever it is, as far as your friend base, or
Oh,
that you
keeping it tight, you mean?
exactly, they keep
Keeping
it
it
very,
tight.
very tight, and so they don't have room to include
Yeah.
anybody else. And I think that being thoughtful about always expanding your friend group is because
Yeah.
you don't know who's new, or like myself, I
Yeah.
lost my spouse. I'm in a completely different position than I
Mhm.
was, when I was married. So things change, or maybe divorced, or whatever it is, but to be thoughtful about that. But I think that having that dinner party really harkens back to that time when we were being thoughtful
Mhm.
about our friend group, and just
Mhm.
manners, and it's just really
Yeah.
it's kind of old school, but I mean, everybody is the winner at a dinner party. If you
No, totally. Well, I
except for those people that don't get invited. So I was gonna say,
just like next time.
get invited.
I was gonna say, if we think it's perfectly acceptable for someone to invite themselves to a dinner party, by which, obviously not in any kind of crass way, but to say, oh my gosh, I would
Yeah.
love to come sometime. Okay,
Mhm.
that's fine.
Mhm.
What if all your friends have a dinner party and you're the one that's not invited? Has that ever happened to either of you?
Well, I think it is just as you experienced with social media. Now that social media has burst on
Yeah.
the scene and we can see what everybody is
Is
doing,
doing.
we didn't necessarily know that we were excluded
Right.
back in the day,
Right.
because
I guess you hear about it
Yeah,
on the water
right.
cooler or something.
Or unless they lived across the street, and then everybody's
I
Right.
mean, I
that
will
had
say,
that actually did happen, a couple of times, but then you
Yeah.
just realize it's not always,
Can't take it personal.
you cannot take it personally.
Yeah.
You really, really
you
can't.
can't take it personal. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think this has ever happened to me, but you know, looking back, I feel like there's probably been dinners, like maybe not a dinner party that I've hosted or someone else has hosted, but
Mhm.
dinners where someone, like a group of people, have gone out that maybe I haven't been invited to. And then, like in
Mhm.
this day and age with social media, you're going to find out about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And obviously that, kind of hurts your feelings. But I don't know. I feel like we talked about, it's kind of, you just have to let it not get to you.
Right.
Yeah. You
Right.
can't take it personally
You can't
because
take it personally.
Right.
perhaps, because as a hostess, right, you're planning your dinner party for guests in mind, and you're
Yeah.
considerate of who you're inviting and how they're going to get to
Exactly.
know each other. And you want to bring friend groups together, or you want to introduce people. Maybe you want to set
Right.
a couple up. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
it could be a setup, and so there's tons of reasons why you choose who you do to have a dinner party, and so you can never let it get you down
Mhm.
personally, right?
Right.
And I don't think, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone, you know, in the back of their head is thinking, I'm not inviting this person.
Exactly.
You
And
know,
that's what we tend
Right.
to think when we
Yes.
haven't been invited. We think it's all about us,
yeah,
rather than just placing ourselves in the hostess
exactly.
position, and it has nothing to do with
It has
you.
nothing.
I mean,
Yeah,
it really, really
Yeah.
doesn't. Yes. So when we take ourselves out of the equation, it's a little bit
Mhm.
easier.
Mhm.
100%.
Yes.
Well, so I did have a question for you. What do you think, as far as hosting a dinner party,
Mhm.
what's the best day? Do you think like a Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday?
Mhm.
I mean, what do you think the best day is for everyone to attend?
I always hosted on a Saturday, because as a young married couple, that was the easiest night to get the babysitter.
Mm.
Um, So that was always a big factor was, when when, when can we have a
Yeah.
babysitter? Because even when you're hosting, you really want somebody to be watching over the children,
Yes.
even
So
though
did
you
you
want
had the
them.
babysitter
Mhm.
come to you and the kids were still at home?
And
Okay.
then they could like come down. It was kind of old school. I mean, it certainly wasn't Downton Abbey or anything like that, but they're always so curious
No,
what's
about
going
what the adults
on.
are
And
doing.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so of course, they would come down and say hi. They'd always be in their PJs because
Yeah.
I think we typically did dinner parties like 7:30 back in the
Okay.
day.
Yeah.
But it was always on a Saturday night
Yeah.
because childcare was involved, and Thursday nights just maybe it would work in today's world, but back then it just
I don't know. I mean, I think Saturdays are the best, like overall, because people don't have to worry about rushing home from work,
Right.
changing
True.
clothes,
Mhm.
or dealing with
Yeah.
commutes or any of that kind of thing.
Right. And
So
as the hostess too, then you had the whole day to prep.
yeah,
Because there's nothing worse than feeling rushed. I mean, we've all been there.
right.
There's nothing worse than, oh my gosh, I have everybody in 30 minutes. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you're throwing your dirty dishes in the, in the dishwasher.
100%.
Yeah.
You just don't like to be under the gun like that. So Saturdays was always good.
Yeah. I like Saturdays. I think that's a
Mhm.
great day. Because your guests have had time to like
Mhm.
relax and deal with their day and like have their weekend
That-
partially and then
That's
go.
right.
Well, let's I'm curious about hostess gifts.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think with the holiday season just behind us, and that's actually really the only time when the idea of hostess gifts really is a topic. And I
Mhm.
think probably if we're talking about dinner parties, it's a topic all year long. It's not
Mhm.
just at Christmas time, but
Mhm.
everyone talks about it at that point, right?
Mhm.
We've got hostess gift lists and things like that.
Mhm.
Well, let's just start with as a hostess,
Mhm.
what was the best gift you ever got as a hostess gift?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not really I can't really think of anything that really like stood out as far as what a memorable gift was, but you are very conscious of the people that didn't bring a gift.
This is
You
so
didn't bring
true.
you didn't bring
This is
This is
100%.
this
Yeah.
is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
and so it just really harkens back to thoughtfulness,
Yeah.
Thoughtfulness.
etiquette. And
Mhm.
so you are thinking about, oh my gosh, my host has gone to great lengths
Yeah.
Yeah.
pull off this dinner party. You should never ever show
Show up
up
empty-handed.
empty-handed.
Empty-handed. Yeah.
My mom always used to say it was a bread and butter gift.
Ah.
So you always had a bread and butter gift
Mhm.
to take with you when you went to someone's home.
Yeah.
It was just imperative, and especially my late husband Mac, and again in the hospitality industry, and he grew up in Europe, and manners were just so important.
Mhm.
So for sure, you always, I mean, the go-to is always you can stop by the grocery store and pick up a bouquet of flowers
Or a bottle of wine
or a bottle of
or
wine or a box
Yeah.
of chocolate. Those are just no-brainers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I learned through the years is that we always had this drawer. We had a little stash. So when we were like traveling and we found like coasters, or when we lived overseas, in Vietnam, we really liked
Mhm.
this one particular thing,
Mhm.
from Vietnam that was very indigenous to that country. So we
That's
stocked
special.
up on that
Mhm.
little gift and then would give that. So then we always had this drawer. So I knew, and having that drawer is really nice because
Yeah.
you're never gonna have to stop at the store and get the bottle of wine.
That's actually a great idea. Is
That is
just
a
like
good idea.
kind of
Mhm.
whether it's a drawer or like a
Mhm.
tote, some kind of storage box
Mhm.
or something where you're just kind of collecting things. Because
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think a bottle of wine is clearly the go-to.
It
I
really
think
is, and it's
Yeah.
always, and you're always very,
It's always a safe
it's
bet.
very
it's
thankful.
super
It's very
Unless
thankful.
right?
someone doesn't
Mhm.
drink,
Right.
and then maybe
And then
flowers or
yeah.
a candle
Well,
or
the
Mhm.
thing about flowers that is interesting is that I've always understood and read this in like etiquette books that don't ever bring just a bouquet of flowers that aren't already in a vase, because then
Oh.
you're asking your hostess
to do the
Exactly.
work.
to deal with like,
Interesting.
oh, I've got this bouquet
Okay.
of flowers. Now I need to cut the
Right.
stems and put it in a vase and da
Mhm.
da da, right? Because you just don't want to
Yeah.
let that sit on your counter or
Mhm.
whatever,
That's
right?
actually interesting because I
So
think
bring
that
them
there's
already
been some
vase.
times where I've probably just brought a bouquet of flowers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I mean, you go to Publix now and they already have them
Right?
pre-based, so that
Yeah.
they make
True.
it so
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah.
So
And
not only
all grocery stores will do that, right? So
Right.
you can just have it already.
Yeah.
It's a complete package. They can
Mm.
just set it on the counter or the table, and
It
there's
makes
no
it
work
so
for them.
easy. I will say I do notice a difference. So I feel like me and Andrew have hosted like a housewarming party
Mhm.
versus a dinner party.
Mhm.
And I do think a lot more people bring gifts, quote unquote,
Sure.
to a housewarming
Oh,
party
yes.
Sure.
than they would a dinner party.
Yes.
But I do agree with you. And I think even if you are attending a dinner party,
Mhm.
even though it's not maybe a housewarming and it's not a new home or, it's not their first party, I do still think you should bring something because
Absolutely.
I mean, they are going to
Mhm.
good lengths to spend the money to, not only pay for the dinner, to pay for
Exactly.
the alcohol,
Mhm.
The time involved in
with the
hosting.
time involved.
So all you have to do is show up.
Exactly.
Showing up empty-handed is just
Is
very
Not
it's just
good.
thoughtless.
Not good.
Yeah.
It's thoughtless, and I think we really need to go back to that time where we're actually thinking about the other person
Yeah.
rather than, I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
well, maybe I don't even want to go that much, rather than thinking,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, maybe I don't want to go, but they put the time and the effort and
Mhm.
energy, and oh my gosh, that's really a very thoughtful thing to do. So I'm
Yeah.
going to reciprocate that thoughtfulness and
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people do have that feeling of, oh, I don't want to go.
Yes.
And I like
Uh-huh.
bringing it back into the COVID
Mhm.
scenario. I
Yeah.
think COVID, and I don't know if it was COVID in general, but I think the being at home and staying at home because of COVID
Mhm.
and people getting used to just always being at home,
Mhm.
once everything opened back up, it became oh, do I really want to
It's a
go?
chore.
It was
It's like
a
a
chore.
chore.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
But
It's
then
also an easy out.
an easy out, and it's just,
Mhm.
well, do you really want to just stay at home and
Mhm.
be by
I
yourself,
know,
or do you
right?
want to go and like socialize and
That's
have a
right.
Yeah.
good time?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I mean, maybe that
And
jumps
community.
into social media and,
I know,
not to
right?
like take it off topic, but people staying at home and just scrolling on their
I
phones.
know.
Yeah.
We're living a
More
vicarious life
solitary.
rather than a life in the moment.
Exactly.
But I
Yeah.
will always choose a life in the moment. And then
Mhm.
hey, social media is my job.
Yeah.
And you and both of you
100%. Yeah.
work with me now.
Yeah.
So there's a
There's a
time and a
and
place.
Yeah.
Exactly. But nothing will ever replace, face to face
Right.
and having that community. And as I said, it's not just always about you. It's about other people too.
Right.
And to be
100%.
mindful about blah, 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 of that. Blah, 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 blah.
You know what I would like to actually see become a trend is instead of having FOMO, fear of
Mhm.
missing out, I
Right.
think people, when they're invited to a thing by someone,
Mhm.
they do a hostess gift, right?
Mhm.
But I think the competition for the best hostess gift should become a thing,
Mhm.
honestly, because a bottle of wine is, yes, it's easy. We can all do it. It's simple. If they don't drink a bouquet of flowers or a bottle of sparkling, cider or something, right?
I
We can get
like
around that.
it.
But I really like the idea of some weird and quirky.
Yeah.
And I will also go one further and say, don't get candles as hostess gifts.
Mhm.
Y'all, like, you don't know what people's personal preference for scents are in their homes.
That's true.
So,
Well, also
it's
some
rough,
people don't
it's a
like
hard thing.
candles.
I know.
It's true.
I know.
It's true.
don't.
Leaving them burning can be
Mhm.
dangerous. So,
Mhm.
I will say that I've gotten some very interesting hostess gifts over time. And I think some of my favorites include things like really cute dish towel sets.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's very thoughtful.
I think that's very
Yeah.
thoughtful and it
Mhm.
is very sweet and it's practical.
Mhm.
These are the kinds of things that I'm like, a bouquet of flowers is beautiful,
Right.
but it's going to go away at some point. A bottle of wine, you're probably going to regift that the next time
Yeah.
you go to a dinner party, right?
No, totally.
A
Right.
candle, you may never burn it, probably a regifting situation.
Mhm.
But things that are,
Something
that you can
thoughtful that
use.
are meaningful.
Yeah,
And I feel
yeah.
like, so
I
actually,
love it.
one of the hosting gifts
Mhm.
that I have gotten, that I still use to this day and I love it, was given to me by one of my best friends. And it was an ice, like an ice maker, that basically was in the shape of an English bulldog.
Oh, it was an ice.
Oh,
An ice mold. Yeah, sorry.
so
Couldn't come up
cute.
with that word. And for everyone that doesn't know, I have an English bulldog.
Mhm.
And so it was just
Asher.
perfect. Yeah, Asher.
It's a very thoughtful and
Uh-huh.
practical gift.
It was so thoughtful. And
Yeah.
they're so cute because,
That sounds like an adorable hostess gift. And I do remember when I first met you, when you came to my house, we actually had a little dinner party. It was just the three of us, you, me, and Andrew, and you brought olive oil. Do you remember that?
Mm.
That was it was a lovely, lovely
yeah.
gesture and very thoughtful. And I really, really did like that. And one of the things that, since I shared that we had that drawer
Mhm.
of hostess gifts at the beck and call, one of my go-tos really is a set of coasters. But
Yeah.
not just any coasters, they're linen coasters. So because they absorb, they're easy, they're less expensive than maybe the marble coasters, or they're not as bulky.
You can wash them in the washing machine.
Exactly, exactly. So yes, so that is definitely my go-to. So
Utilitarian hostess
Mhm.
gifts are the best,
they really are.
honestly. And cooking ingredients is a perfect gift.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, something special that they wouldn't maybe buy for themselves. I think that's the
Exactly.
essence of a hostess gift,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So you think we've covered everything about dinner parties? Any other lingering questions?
Well, I will say we could probably talk about this for 5 more hours,
We could.
but
We really could.
but maybe for another day.
Yeah.
Another day.
Another day.
Another day. All right. So stay tuned next week when we will drop another episode of Message from Mom. And you can follow us and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we're also on YouTube and on Instagram. So, okay, ladies, we're going to continue to bust that myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law. And we'll see you next week.